able to kind of craft it, and was very complimentary towards Hooper and his work on the film, and wishes him well on his next project and thanks him for all of his work on this one. So the letter was kind of weird. It was kind of almost like a lawyer telling Spielberg, you need to get out there and say all this stuff so that there isn't another lawsuit further on down the road. It kind of, if you read that entire letter word for word, it almost sounded like very, very political, very, I need to hit all these major legal points saying that I'm not the one who directed it, you were. Thank you for letting me be involved in this project, but you were the one that actually did it. And maybe that was him getting in front of a controversy. Maybe that was him trying not to throw Hooper under the bus, although it kind of has that feeling, all the stuff leading up to this, that he was throwing them under the bus, but also trying to avoid any kind of breach of contract with Universal over the fact that he really directed this film when he wasn't supposed to be directing a film. A lot of the actors have kind of disputed as to who was the director. Zelda Rubinstein, who plays Tangina, yeah. Right? Tangina, yeah. The medium that comes in kind of at the end of the second act to help the family get their daughter back, get Caroline back. She said that all 6 days that she was on set, Spielberg was the one directing the film. Now that report was debated by another actor in the movie, James Cairn, who plays kind of the de facto villain, Mr. Teague. He shows up at the very end, and like the movie doesn't really have a villain. Even the ghosts aren't really the villain, because the movie's more about family.
Well, what about they say the Beast?
The Beast, but it's only really mentioned. But the actual villain, and we'll find out why when we get to that point, in the movie, James Cairn plays Mr. Teague, who is the villain, said that Rubinstein's kind of being overly harsh to Hooper, saying Hooper was nice, treated you fair, and you're kind of shitting on him right now.
Yeah.
An article in 2012 commemorating the 30th anniversary of the film, which is, we're coming up on the 40th anniversary, so that shows you how old the movie is right now. But in 2012, this 30th anniversary kind of retrospective, a lot of the cast and crew involved were asked about this debate as to who really is the director, and pretty much everyone sides with Hooper, saying, no, he was the guy directing, he was the guy that was talking to us, kind of molding our performances in the film. Oliver Robbins, who plays Robbie in the film, the son of the Freelings, said it was always Hooper. He was the guy. He was the one that was helping me with my performance. He was the one collaborating with the crew. The makeup and effects artists claimed Spielberg had final say on everything on the set, even so much as the steak, which is a scene that I really want to get into. Mm-hmm. The steak moving across the counter, like the look of it, all that, which was kind of pre-approved by Hooper. When Spielberg saw it, he didn't like it, wanted it changed. So then, from then on, it was kind of like, okay, we need to clear everything with both guys first before we do any work. Because he felt like, well, my work just has to get flushed down the toilet now because Spielberg didn't like it, even though it was pre-approved. I think Hooper... When did Hooper die? 2017?
Yeah, it was pretty recent.
Because I remember you wanted to do like a Tobe Hooper movie for like a commemorative episode, and I suggested Poltergeist, and you're like, no, because he might not be the real director on it. Yeah. We want to kind of give him his own movie, and not talk so much about Steven Spielberg as we do Tobe Hooper. But he was asked about it in, I think, 2015, a couple years before he died, and said that he thinks the rumor started with that Los Angeles Times article, which was out a couple of weeks before the film, or maybe one that was written during production, looking at my notes. But at the very beginning, there's a scene where a guy is riding a bike and he's got the beers in his hand, and
Yeah.
the kids have the remote-controlled cars.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Spielberg was playing around with the cars on set. I think maybe he set up that shot, which is probably a second unit shot. And the Los Angeles Times sees this, talks about Spielberg being the director, even though it was just him messing around with, some little insert shot. Hooper's elsewhere shooting a scene, but he thinks that the controversy kind of stems from that. But he said he wasn't fully aware of just how big this controversy was until, his work on the film was done. And this was just a couple weeks from release. But he says, I can't set the record any straighter than that. Is I'm on set, I'm the one doing all the work. Spielberg is messing around in something, somebody sees that and says, oh, he's the one that's directing the film. But even Hooper said, no, that's not true. But according to him, he wasn't really aware of how big of a mess this was until just before the film is released.
Do you think it had really, like it was a power play where, of course, Spielberg was a big deal back then, and Tobe Hooper was still relatively like a subculture
for sure
icon?
For sure. I mean, Spielberg is coming off of Jaws and Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's the next movie that he has set up and about to be worked on is going to be, the biggest hit of all time at that point in time.
Yeah.
Bigger than Star Wars. So yeah, he's big shit guy around Hollywood at that point in time, and yeah, this is very much I'm the big guy here, I'm the one doing the story, and I think it's really just that clause in the Universal contract that prevents him from having his name on this. Here, cinematographer. The cinematography in the film is great, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
The guy who's the cinematographer is John Leonetti. You might know him. He directed Annabelle. He was also James Wan's cinematographer on a lot of the James Wan films.
He directed Annabelle, the first one?
Yeah.
Not a great movie.
Not a great movie, from what I understand, from what you said. The second one is pretty solid.
Yeah. Second one's Creation, right?
Yeah. I remember you recommended that to me, and I watched that one afternoon. Agreed. But he was his cinematographer for James Wan for a lot of his earlier horror films. I think up until... I think he did the second Conjuring was the last movie he did for him, and then Wan does the Fast and Furious movie, and then I think Aquaman.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those weren't shot by Leonetti. But Leonetti is the cinematographer on this movie. Or no, is he? No, Matthew Leonetti, who I believe is his father, is the cinematographer. John is an assistant cameraman. So sorry for making that mistake. He's the assistant cameraman on this film. I think his father, Matthew, is the cinematographer on Poltergeist. But he said that, according to him, Spielberg directs more of the movie than Hooper does. He was saying that Hooper was happy to be there. He had input, but Spielberg was the one that develops it. He's the one that is quote-unquote the producer, but he really directed everything, and he was cool just to kind of let Tobe Hooper be involved, and Hooper was kind of just keeping his mouth shut. So there's that, and then the last report that I have that my notes turned up was Mick Garris. I don't know if you know who Mick Garris is.
Mm-mm.
I'd have to look up to see if he's directed any studio films, but for a long time he was the guy directing a lot of the Stephen King miniseries. I know he did the Stand. I think he did the shitty version of The Shining.
I've seen that.
I think he did... What was one of the other ones I think he did? I can't remember now off the top of my head. I think he did Sleepwalkers. I think that might have been one of his only studio films. But I guess he was a publicist for Poltergeist. Visited the set multiple times. came to his defense in 2017 after Hooper had died, saying he's the one who was deeply involved, he's the one developing the film, he's unequivocally the director, despite Spielberg's constant involvement on set. But he says all the pre-production was Hooper. He says the film's truly his vision, not Spielberg's, and that Hooper got the credit and deserves the credit for directing the film. So that might be the end of my notes on this controversy as to who directed the film. It kind of still sounds like it's up in the air as to who really is the true director. We might never know. I think a lot of it is...
Well, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Your person, like, of course you know both of their work. So, and you've said before that you can see Spielberg's stamp throughout this.
For sure, like the whole suburbia thing,
yeah.
The kind of, this thing that happens that kind of forces the family into a crisis, and they kind of come together. It's very much E.T., like I said.
Yeah, because it has these kind of quirky sensibilities, and then it turns real dark, you know, in certain spots. Even, like, the choice of score is very...
The Jerry Goldsmith score, which is awesome.
Yes.
Almost sounds kind of John Williams-esque, especially early on.
Yes. Which is ironic because I think he was nominated for an Oscar, but lost to
John Williams for E.T.
Yeah.
Which I can't argue against because the E.T. score is pretty phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But the Jerry Goldsmith score for Poltergeist is fantastic. I know that Spielberg's usual editor, Michael Kahn, edited this film, and Carol Littlejohn actually edited E.T., so they kind of swapped editors. So when the film completes shooting in August of 1981, Hooper spends some time editing. I think he spends about 10 weeks editing the film. Once he turns in his first cut, I think that was the last of his involvement in the film. All the post-production stuff, the editing, the effects work, the scoring, the sound design, all of that was overseen by Spielberg, according to the research and my notes. So there's that, and even reading like some of the on-set stuff. There were a couple of things where I think Heather O'Rourke was scared of doing the scene where the closet opens up and all the stuff is kind of being sucked into the closet.
Yeah.
So she's hanging on to the headboard. I think she got really frightened doing that stunt. So she was crying, and then Spielberg is the one to jump in and give her a hug and reassure her that we don't have to shoot that again. I think they actually did, but with another actor in the wig. Or, a stunt person in a wig. Can't wait to talk about the clown. But when the clown starts strangling Robbie in the climax of the film, he was actually being choked. He's saying he can't breathe. They think it's a good performance. But when Spielberg realizes that he's actually being choked, he's turning red, he's the one to jump in and kind of pry the clown off of him, not Hooper. The last thing I read about was Jo Beth Williams was kind of hesitant to do the stunt where she's in the pool because of the big lights that were around the pool on set, and she was worried that one of the lights was going to fall into the water.
Electrocute her.
Yeah, an electrocute her. So Spielberg jumps into the pool with her and says, "Oh, well, if the light's going to come down and electrocute us, then we're both going to fry." But him doing that kind of gives her the reassurance to do the scene. But he's the one jumping in and doing that. He's the one jumping in to protect the kids or to reassure the kids or something. And it's not Hooper. He's the one doing all the post-production stuff. So when you ask about who I think the real director is, honestly, it feels like Spielberg. And I don't mean to kind of disparage Hooper, but it feels like, yeah, Spielberg is the director. and because of the clause in the contract.